Okay, good morning, everybody. You are very welcome to today's session, Driving Digital Inclusion in Your Community. So my name is Emily Nelson. I work for The Wheel, and I'm going to be your moderator / MC for the morning. I am delighted to be joined by a host of fabulous guest speakers. So with us today, we have Liz Kelly from Include, we have Gemma Lee from Largus, we have Gemma Leo from the Crown Centre, and we have Katrina Whelan from the National Adult Literacy Agency. So before we get stuck in, I'm just going to do some very quick Zoom housekeeping. So I'm going to ask for the standard Zoom consideration of keeping yourself on mute as appropriate, just to avoid any background noise. You'll note that we are recording today's session, so if you don't want to appear on said recording, feel free to keep your camera switched off. My colleague Christina is here providing tech support, so if you do have any Zoom issues, feel free to just message her directly in the chat and she'll do her best to sort you out. You can also use the chat to say hello and tell us where you're coming from today. So we are going to be sharing the recording and the slides and any other resources and materials that are mentioned in a follow-up email that will go out later this week. So that is it on the housekeeping side of things. So I'm just going to take you through the agenda now and what you can expect to get out of the day. So we are going to start the day with the consultation side of things. So we're going to start with a quick Menti poll just to kind of get the lay of the land in terms of where audience members are with developing their own digital strategies for their organizations. Then we're going to have a consultation in breakout rooms for about 15 minutes, where we just expand on some of the questions that we've asked in the Menti poll and look at opportunities and barriers for developing digital strategies or digital inclusion projects for your organizations and communities. After the consultation side of things, we're going to move on to the inspiration portion of the event. So we're going to have a panel of our guest speakers where we're going to look at developing inclusive digital initiatives and projects, what that looks like in action, and the supports that are out there for developing these things. We'll have some time for Q&A with the panelists. And then after the inspiration side of things, we're going to move on to the action side of things. So Liz Kelly from Include is going to take us through the digital landscape in Ireland and give us a practical roadmap and steps to getting started with digitalizing your own organization. So that is what you can expect from today. So we're going to jump right into the consultation side of things with this Menti moment. So there are 3 questions that we have for you in the Menti poll, and you can access it by scanning the QR code on your phone. You can also go to menti.com and use that code there. And I think Christina will also pop the Menti link into the chat, so you can click on that to access the poll as well. So it's just 3 questions that we have that you should be able to move through at your own speed. So the first one is just a simple yes or no. Do you have a digital strategy for your organization? The second one looks at a scale of 1 to 5. If you do have a digital strategy, where are you on kind of implementing that strategy? And then the last question is just looking at what you think about the kind of level of supports for digital initiatives that we have here in Ireland. So do you feel like there are a lot of supports, no supports at all, a bit of support, or you're not really sure? So hopefully everybody has had a chance to scan that, and I can just share the results of the poll as they come in, just to give our speakers and everybody else a sense of the kind of level of experience in the room. So there we go. All right, so most people don't have a digital strategy for their organization, and that is totally fine. That's why we're here today. So hopefully today's event provides a lot of good food for thought for you on how you can get started developing your strategy and maybe learn from your peers that have. Okay. And then where are you on this journey? So perhaps people, oh, okay. There we go, some results. So just started. I think a lot of it will probably be on the 1 and 2 side of things if people don't really have digital strategies yet, and that is more than okay. Yeah, so we've got most people who just started and some people that have some things up and running. Okay. And then the last question, do you feel there is support for community groups regarding their digital journey? Okay. So the majority of people saying they're not sure, they're not aware of these supports. So again, that's why we're here today, to highlight what supports are out there. So hopefully people come away feeling a bit more confident about starting or expanding digitalization for their organization or for their stakeholders. Okay, so thank you all very much for participating in that poll. So, as I said, what we're going to do now is go into breakout rooms, and I don't want people to panic at the thought of breakout rooms. We're only going to be in them for around 15 minutes, and each breakout room is going to have one of the panelists or speakers today as a designated note taker. So don't feel like you need to be kind of taking notes or anything like that. There'll be someone in there that's going to be recording your input on Padlet. And we're also going to keep the Padlet open after the breakout rooms in case you don't have a chance to contribute or there's something you forgot to say. So very quickly, I'm just going to share the screen about what 4 questions we're going to be asking in the breakout rooms. So you have a sense of we'll be discussing. Again, don't feel like you need to write these down. So what we're going to be looking at, what are the main barriers to digitalization? And that could be to digitalizing your own organization and staff, or helping your community and stakeholders to digitalize. And then the other question is, what are the priorities you have in ensuring that your digital strategy or your digital initiatives are inclusive? And then do you see any opportunities in digitalization and how it could transform your work? And finally, what further supports or just supports in general do you need to progress or start your digitalization journey? So those are the things that we'll be looking at in the breakout rooms. So we really hope that you take the time to just to share your thoughts. And what we are going to be doing with all of this input is we had a similar event, the same event essentially last week on the 16th, where we asked people the same questions, and we're going to be taking the results from that event and today's event and compiling them into a report that we'll share at our final digital transformation event next week on the 30th. So we're going to be looking at the kind of main trends to come out of the report. So what do people really need in terms of starting or progressing their digitalization journey, or helping their stakeholders or beneficiaries to digitalize? So that will probably be things like skills, funding needs, an action plan to getting started. So we'll pop the link into the chat so that everybody can join that event and see kind of the results from today's consultation and last week's, and kind of delve more into the big trends that are coming out of them. So we are going to go into the breakout rooms now, and hopefully you have some fruitful discussions. We'll see you back here in the main room.
Exactly. So I'm going to open the rooms now, and then I'm going to assign the moderators. So just stay there and wait for your moderator. Okay, is that working now? I hope everyone is getting an invitation to join the room.
I'll introduce our panelists. And then if people have questions for the panelists, feel free to pop them in the chat. And then at the end of the panel session, we have time for a quick kind of question and answer session. So on our panel today, we have Gemma Lee. So Gemma is the Senior Support and Development Officer for Adult Education in Lergus. Lergus is the Irish National Agency for the EU's Erasmus Plus funding program, which funds projects related to education, training, youth, and sport. So Gemma's role is to support organizations to grow and develop through Erasmus Plus projects and funding, and she supports organizations at all stages from initial idea through to grant application, project implementation, and reporting. So we also have Gemma Leo, who is the Business Support and Project Manager at the Crown Centre in Cork. So the Crown Centre supports children and adults living with congenital, progressive, or acquired neurophysical disabilities and their family members across Cork and Munster. So at Crown, Gemma's focus is to streamline processes, create efficiencies, and ensure that the experience for the families who access their services continues to improve. And the key driver is to do as much of this through digitalization, ensuring a give back of value add time to their service staff. And then we also have Katrina Whelan, who is the Acting Communications Advocacy and Outreach Manager in NALA. So NALA is the National Adult Literacy Agency, and they are committed to making sure people with unmet literacy and numeracy needs have access to learning opportunities and can fully take part in society. And Katrina has worked in NALA since 2017, previously working on the Right On platform that supported over 11,000 learners to receive over 42,000 QQI awards at levels 2 and 3. So she's managed the implementation of the Learn with NALA e-learning platform, which continues the work of Right On, supporting learners working at QQI levels 1 to 3. So that is our panel. I'm just going to spotlight our panelists. And if I can, there we go. And where's the other Gemma? Okay. And Christina, I don't know if maybe you can spotlight me.
I think I
If we do that.
did.
Okay.
Or
Oh,
there, I see you pinned.
okay, cool. All right, we'll just get on with it then. So, Gemma Leo, I am going to start with you. So can you tell us what is the Crown Center's experience in delivering digital inclusion projects? So can you maybe kind of talk us through some of your past or current digital inclusion projects, maybe for your organization or for your stakeholders and community?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi team, my name's Gemma Leo. Just a little bit about my background. So I've spent the last 15 years in the UK working in roles such as research and development, business process transformation, software development, and kind of head of product and projects. Moved to Ireland about 14 months ago. Did the foolish thing, married for love, not money. So here I am. And started working with the Crown Centre in January of this year, so the last 10 months. And I was quite fortunate, I guess, that I've stepped into a brand new role. So this is the kind of project manager and business support role, because the Crown Centre identified that actually, if we're going to really do this and we're going to focus on it and we're going to make the changes that we want, then we have to have staff focused on it. So I got brought in to do the kind of the project manager role. And kind of before I was here, there was stuff going on, but not necessarily like a real kind of project focus on making all of these changes. It really kind of happened organically, and that's absolutely wonderful because we just started delivering services to people as quickly as possible. But we kind of came to this bit of inflection point where it says, actually, if you don't focus it, if you don't have someone dedicated to that piece, if you don't have someone focusing on these kind of projects and this digitalization strategy, then you're just going to kind of keep chasing your tail. So the kind of project that we're really focused on at the moment, we're calling it our service process redesign, but it's taking all of the individual parts of the business, really understanding where the challenges are. So doing your as-is process mapping, understanding what technologies use, how long it takes, do your time and motion kind of studies on those activities, and then looking at where we can either improve or implement a new piece of software in order to create those efficiencies and effectiveness, to give back the ultimate aim, which is to give back time to our staff to do the value add pieces that only they can do. Examples of that is, so a referral to our organization. So how we get kind of clients into us from a professional referral was taking about 40 minutes. We've implemented a digital online referral form, which automatically populates into our CRM Salesforce, and some automation in there. And we've taken out 23 minutes and one person out of that. And when you think about the fact that, you know, we get 20 to 30 referrals a month times 23 minutes, you're looking at, you know, 8 to 10 hours in a month that we can give back. How are we going to better utilize those 8 to 10 hours to do things with our clients, to provide better services? And we're also looking at, so our intake process, where it's agreed that someone's going to receive services from Crown. We take the time to understand exactly what their needs are, what their family situation, what their diagnosis. At the moment, you know, we did the time and motion, it takes 2 hours and 40 minutes. our focus is how can we get that down to an hour and 30 by utilising a digital solution, an AI-based solution, whatever it might be, to give, again, that we're hopefully going to cut out an hour and 10 minutes of that time, again, to free up that staff to do reviews or more intakes or more referrals. So that's, yeah, kind of a focus on what our projects are at the moment.
Great, thank you. And then Katrina, I might just bounce over to you there. So obviously digital transformation and I guess digitalization are really important topics for the community sector. So what is our role in driving inclusion in this space, and why is it so important to the sector?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, I suppose as you were saying about who NALA is, and our commitment to help people with unmet literacy needs. So just, I suppose, a bit of background. We've been going since 1980. We're an independent charity and we advocate as well for people with low levels of literacy. So I suppose we see our own role to help with diverse groups, to help people gain confidence, to empower individuals to become self-sufficient and active members of society, and to raise awareness of the fact that there is a literacy difficulty within Irish society. So the last PX study from 2012, and there will be a new one out in December this year, showed that 1 in 6 of people had issues around literacy. So I suppose we feel as a society, it's important to make sure that everybody is working to help reduce that stigma for people. We have a podcast going called I Forgot My Glasses, which helps people realise that you know, if somebody comes up to you, and it's happened to me myself one time at a bank ATM, that there was somebody in front of me who said that so there was a glare on the screen and they were finding it difficult to read what was in it, and would I read out the details of their bank account. Now, it wasn't a particularly sunny day and I did help that person, and I suppose obviously from my work in NALA, but for everybody to realise that there are vulnerable people out there who do need help, and to help, I suppose, reduce that stigma and put people in touch with services like NALA and others represented here today. So I suppose, yeah, we feel that, you know, our role is to address those imbalances, to help create an understanding really between people, so that will lead to a more harmonious community where everybody would feel valued and can contribute. And in doing so, that brings in a variety of perspectives, different ideas and experiences to the fore, and that'll help other groups and create a better system for living and working.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katrina. And Gemma, I guess, Gemma Lee, zooming out from kind of the Irish context and sort of putting it in the context of the EU. So obviously digital transformation is a big priority for the European Commission. So what is the Commission doing to ensure that nobody's left behind in the just transition?
Thanks, Emily. Well, I'm not going to try and answer for the entire of the European Commission, because I think we need a whole extra webinar for that. I suppose my role in Ergus is we manage the Erasmus Plus programme as well as a few other different European programmes. So my focus would really be on the kind of the education side of it, but also we overlap a little bit with some of the kind of employment and employability types areas as well. And really there's so much built into those programs to try and support this transition, and try and support to bring people along in terms of those digital skills and those digital tools. The digital action plan is a huge one, digital education action plan that came in right across Europe. And that includes like a really broad spectrum. And I think it reflects actually a lot of what we discussed in the chat rooms earlier and on the Padlet in terms of, you know, it's training needs, of course, is huge, upskilling, reskilling for people, but there's also things in there about the digital ecosystem. You know, there's no point in knowing how to use all these tools if we don't have Wi-Fi at home or if we don't have access to the devices. Yeah. So there's lots of different bits and pieces in there. There's also a focus on AI and the AI guidelines. And again, that's something that we chatted about in the rooms. That's so important at the moment that we need to get our heads around this, because there's so many good possibilities and opportunities, but also there's a lot of fear and there is a lot of risk. So the European AI Act came in on August 1st. It will take a while to be fully implemented and for things to start happening, but it's good to see that movement happening. And I think when it comes to those big issues, those are things that need to happen at a European level. Because if we're all working away in our individual countries, we're all possibly heading in different directions. So for those kind of big things, I think it's always really powerful to have the European Commission and to have that kind of collaboration across Europe for those kind of topics. I mean, specifically in the work that I do and in the Erasmus Plus programs, the digital transition is one of our key kind of priority areas. It's one of the key things that we look at, to the point where our applicants would literally get some extra points on their application forms for including those pieces in their project proposals. We always look for that kind of thing, and we have support, both kind of practical and also financial supports for people to include digital elements into their project proposals. So whether that's maybe building a blended, a virtual element into an international exchange, so that you meet your peers online before you go there, and you can really maximize that time in person, because you're not having to figure out who's who. You've done some of that collaboration before you go. Also things like doing evaluations online after they get back, because sometimes doing that evaluation form on the last day of a week-long really busy trip is not as effective as doing it online 6 weeks later when you've had time to reflect on everything. So we build all these kind of online opportunities and digital opportunities into the programs. We also have kind of online spaces where people can share resources and can network with each other. So I think when we did the previous version of this event, you had my colleague Mark from IPALE. IPALE is the electronic platform for adult learning in Europe. And it's just a great place for anyone involved in any kind of adult education programs to see what's happening across Europe, to learn from each other. There's also online courses and training you can do within the platform itself. So we try and kind of build this into all the different elements of the work that we do.
Yeah, excellent. And we can definitely include like the link to IPALE and anything else in the follow-up email, so people can have a look and see what that looks like for them and how it might benefit them. And then Gemma, just back to you in the Crown Center. Gemma Lee mentioned kind of that there's risk and sometimes fear involved in kind of taking on these like digitalization projects, whether it's about digitalizing your own services and systems for your staff and for your organization, or kind of developing supports for your stakeholders to feel digitally included and kind of brought along. So I'm kind of wondering, what sort of challenges or opportunities have you encountered in sort of developing these projects, or are there any sort of supports that that you would recommend to people that are kind of starting out on this journey?
Yeah, definitely. I really kind of took some time to think about this, and what I wish I'd kind of known, back 10 years ago when I kind of started to look out for. So for me, challenges that you're going to face, and this is actually kind of, it's for all projects, but really with digitalization, where there is the fear, the lack of the skill set. I'm not really sure, so I'm just not going to use it. I don't want to break the software, all that sort of stuff. But kind of the number one challenge is people resource. Quite often organizations, and particularly organizations that will be here where cost and money is everything, and making every penny count is really important. So quite often we will try to utilize our business as usual staff to do this transformation and project and digital focus on the side. And actually, you need to have staff that are dedicated, that are the champions, that will absolutely push it forward for you. Because when you've got business as usual, that's always going to take priority. Services and delivering to our clients will always take priority. So the number one challenge to overcome is figure out how to ring fence a member of staff or bring in a new member of staff that's purely focused on delivering this for you. And that then goes into, I think, the second challenge, which is expertise. You have to find the person or bring the person in that is comfortable in this area. We've had examples where we have given, the implementation of our CRM to somebody who'd never worked with kind of software and CRMs before. And they've done an absolutely fantastic job, and we have it working. But now when you reflect and look back, you think, oh, okay, that's not quite what we wanted to achieve. And that's because they purely didn't have the knowledge or understanding of how to do it. So figure out how to address that challenge of getting the right person into that space to deliver it for you. And that then leads into the third one, which is the lack of planning. We all know time is all of our biggest challenge. It's our most precious resource, and finding it is really, really hard. But it goes back to this, what's urgent versus important. Urgent things on fire in front of you right now, of course, they have to be dealt with. But when you look at what's important, it's giving time back to our staff. It's making sure that we don't forget that all of this is about our clients and who we serve. So by taking the time up front to plan out exactly what you're trying to achieve, exactly what you what your measures of success are, if you can get over that challenge and put that in place first of all, then that's a really good thing to do. Next is the kind of 3 opportunities that I really thought about, and particularly in kind of this I think group of organizations, is volunteering. So we quite often have, we have organizations that want to kind of tick the box and do their charity day, and it's fantastic. They come into your center or your organization and they maybe do painting or gardening or whatever. What we've done is we've partnered with an organization that's physically over the road, and worked out exactly what skill set they have in digital transformation, in project planning, in project management, and they have volunteered that time. So figure out what organizations want to volunteer with you, figure out what that expertise is, and use that volunteering to get that skill set into your business for free, essentially. Another opportunity is, it's always the opportunity to listen to staff, because change management is the hardest thing for all of us. Like, none of us as humans, we all struggle with change, but bringing people along that journey is an absolute opportunity to success. And so I don't know whether any of you remember Challenge Annika from the 90s, where they had these like crazy challenges, but we've initiated Challenge Caroline in our business. Caroline's our Salesforce administrator. And we've said to people, don't try and fix it, don't try and solutionize, define what your problem is, define what your challenge is, go and challenge Caroline, and we will help work it out. And there we've immediately got buy-in, because they're setting the challenge and they're setting what the measures of success is, and therefore they feel responsible for supporting us to implement that change. So things like that, listening to staff, your little challenge, whoever your staff member might be, is really helpful. And then lastly, the opportunity to create a baseline. Right at the start, take the time to do your as-is process mapping, to do your time and motion, define what your baseline is, because then you will always be able to look back and say, hold on, look where we've come. And that again is, when you're talking about change management and this feel-good feeling across your organization, getting your baseline and measuring your success is your absolute opportunity.
Excellent. I mean, I think that's really, really practical advice for organizations. And I know from the benefit of moderating this event last week that Liz is going to echo a lot of those things in her presentation later. So that's great to hear. And Katrina, I guess just on the topic of sort of like practical supports and things that people can put in place when they're kind of thinking about their digital strategies or digitalizing. So a lot of people know about things like screen readers and tools like that, but are there other kind of more overlooked pieces that people often forget about that maybe they should be thinking about when they're kind of thinking about digitalizing?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, I mean, I would often say about, keeping it simple. Like, there are an awful lot of tools out there, and that was one of the themes that came up in our Padlet group as well, that, there can be a confusion over what's available and where best to start. So I would say start by keeping it simple. We know that the EU Accessibility Act is coming out now in 2025, and it's great in terms of bringing awareness and attention to inclusion, universal design and accessibility. And there's an awful lot out there, and I commend yourselves for putting on this event today and getting everybody involved, because this kind of event to inform and support each other is a great place to get that kind of information as well. So things like, for example, the NALA Plain English design tips, and I'm happy to share this in the chat at the end, will just give information on how to get your basic document right, because I think if you start with having that document right for screen readers and using a universal design approach, then it's going to be right for everybody. I would also recommend the National Disability Authority's customer communications toolkit for services to the public. That's a great resource that is beautifully written in terms of how to get your document right. And by getting it right, what I mean is, you know, having simple language, just using short sentences, having the design clear, adequate spacing, not using underline, not using italics, things like that, so that it will be a good design starting off, and then when you go to publish it online or on your website, it will be usable by a screen reader. And I would say that that kind of approach, that getting it right from the start and using the likes of the accessibility checker that is built into all Microsoft applications, so it's in Word, PowerPoint, and so on. By using that is as important as, you know, getting your font right. And I can share some links, as I say, in the chat on how to get started with using those accessibility tools, which comes from the NDA. And there's also a lot of expertise out there. So, for example, we use an e-learning platform by a company called D2L. They work with a company called Fable, which is a team of people with disabilities who test software. So they are bringing that perspective in to the software development process. We've also partnered with Sinead Burke in terms of running an event recently for people who got QQI awards on our Learn with Nala e-learning platform. And Sinead is a founder of Tilting the Lens, which I'd also recommend checking out. They've worked with Gucci, Vogue, Smirnoff, and other global brands in terms of reframing fashion, creating an accessible nightlife. So there are companies who are out there who are looking at accessibility from a very experienced lens and who can help in terms of bringing accessibility and inclusion into your organizations.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katrina. I think that's, again, a lot of kind of practical kind of resources and toolkits for people to explore. And I will include those in the follow-up email as well. And Gemma, back to yourself, just on, you know, looking at kind of examples in the community of Erasmus Plus projects that are around digital inclusion. Do you have any kind of examples of projects that you can share with the group today, just that maybe have supported organizations to digitalize their services or have been around kind of supporting their communities to be comfortable getting online?
Yeah, for sure. I was having a look through some of the ongoing projects that we have at the moment, and there's some really interesting ones on this theme. So one that I spotted is one that the Ballymun Job Centre are running. It's called Empower Her, or Empower with a H. I don't know. It's written funny.
Yeah.
But the whole idea really there is upskilling women, and I suppose a lot of women tend to step out of the workforce at different times, and need to come back in. And digital skills move so quickly that, you know, if you haven't been working in an office for 3 or 4 years, you've fallen so far behind that it can be hard to catch up. But their project is a big project, so they now have this kind of online portal where you can go on, you can do a self-assessment to understand where your skills are now, and then they can kind of signpost you to further training, to guidance, to different things that you might need to help you meet those gaps in your skill sets. And I should say that anything that's created through these Erasmus Plus programs is always open source. That's a kind of a core factor of it all. So, you know, when these projects, even for a few years after they're finished, you can go on, you can access these resources. Anybody on the call here can look that project up and can access these. There's also a really fascinating one coming on from Meath Partnership, and it's called Digital Upbringing. So a lot of their work, they do kind of family learning, and they're looking at the different generations. And for this particular one, basically the nugget of it is that they're trying to support parents to be one step ahead of their kids. And I think that's such an important piece of this. So they've created this kind of competency framework of, what do I as a parent need to know before my kid gets online, before they get their first device, before they sign up to social media for the first time? So what do I need to understand so that I can keep those children safe, and that I can educate my kids and keep them knowledgeable and clear as to what they need to do and how to keep safe. So I thought that was a really interesting concept as well, because again, that can be a challenging one that sometimes the kids are so quick at picking this stuff up and they know all the lingo and they know all the tools, and sometimes the parents can be maybe a step behind. But I mean, they're both these huge, big €250,000 projects that have all these online tools. We've also got some really nice, simple, straightforward projects that I think, you know, maybe for the people on the call here might be a little bit of an inspiration. So Crosscare have one just lately with us, where they are looking at kind of incorporating digital technology and outdoor education. And this just blew my mind because it wasn't something that would ever occur to me. That would be something you might do. But I guess the kind of service users that Crosscare might work with would be quite vulnerable people who may not necessarily sign up for a digital skills training program. But they might sign up for a hiking event where they're then going to get to use a phone and use Google Maps and use VR technology and use all these different things. So their project is a quite simple little small project with us, where they've basically found a really cool training course on this topic. We're funding 10 of their staff to go and be upskilled in this area. They're going to come back, they're going to train the rest of the staff, and they're going to roll out these programs. So Erasmus Plus programs, there's some big ones that involve lots of international partners and all of that, but there's also some of these nice straightforward ones where if people are on the call here and they're going, actually, we really could do with some training on this, or we could love to job shadow and visit another organization that's doing it really well. Those kind of small projects are something that we can support as well. And I think across Europe, you know, there's probably somebody else who's already got this figured out that we can learn from. We're not always starting from zero with these projects, for sure.
Yeah, and then so how do organizations get involved with Erasmus Plus? What should be kind of the first step that they take if they want to avail of this kind of funding?
Give me a shout.
5 minutes notice. I'm sorry.
No, honestly,
Just jumping in here because we have a 5 minute notice, just to keeping the time. Just
okay.
No worries. Go on, please.
But yeah, no, for sure. Like, check out our website. It's Lergus.ie. The spelling is on my thing here because nobody knows how to spell Lergus. Or drop me an email. I know, Emily, you'll pass more details on after this. So we've just had a deadline in October. Our next deadlines for funding applications are going to be in the spring, February and March. My project before the end of this week is to set up all of our kind of training events. So we run a lot of different webinars as well as in-person events in the run up to those deadlines. So yeah, if you check out our event calendar, we'll have all of those scheduled in the next few weeks that will lead us up to the spring deadlines. But if people are stuck, just drop me a line and I can help direct you in the right place. You know, especially this time of year, I'm actually available to kind of have those phone calls and have one-to-ones with people. As we get closer to the deadline, that gets harder to do. But right now, I'm in a space for that. Yeah.
All right, now's your window to talk to Gemma. Okay, great. And then Gemma, Leo, over to yourself. What are the Crown Centre's plans around digital inclusion or digitalization projects going forward? What's next for you?
Before I answer that, Gemma Lee, is there a way to keep ahead of my child just in life in general, not just online? I'd like that advice. But our main kind of key focus, and I think I truly believe it should be for every organisation, is around data and data knowledge. We have to make data-driven decisions. Gut feelings are fantastic and you know, it's great when they work out, but if you are not bringing all of the data around about your business all together and looking at it as one picture, then you're going to kind of struggle there with the effectiveness. And I just want to give an example of, we saw that our continence referrals were very low, were dropping off. So our marketing team went off and did a whole strategy and, you know, contacted referrals, professional referrals, told them about our services. Fantastic. And on the surface, you think that is a great individual piece of work that we look at. But when you look at it in a silo, but when you look at all of your business data together and you match out, okay, we did this activity, it didn't increase our continence referrals. So actually, that's not a piece of activity that we want to repeat. That wasn't cost effective for us. So I can't say enough, bring all of your data into one place, whether it's Power BI, Datadog, there's loads of kind of solutions, but bring all of your data around your business, from your CRM, from your social medias, whatever it might be, bring it into one place and focus on data-driven decisions. And that's really where we're at the moment.
Perfect. It's good sound advice. Katrina, back to yourself. So you mentioned a lot of the supports that NALA has to offer. So I just wanted to see if you could just give people some advice on how they get involved with yourselves, or if there's any other supports that you want to highlight.
Yeah, thanks. So we run webinars, and that will be on areas like financial literacy. And there's a series of webinars that's starting now this Friday, and they'll run for the next couple of Fridays. So I'll pop a link to our NALA events in the chat. So those webinars are free to attend. We also run training around plain English, and we have a plain English editing service. We have a bank of resources that's available for any tutors to use, and that would include workbooks around literacy, numeracy. We also run free professional development courses on integrating literacy and preparing learning materials. So that's on our Learn with NALA website. You can sign up with us as a registered centre and use our e-learning platform in a blended learning scenario to support your learners to get QQI awards. So that's currently at levels 2 and 3. And we also have resources at QQI level 1. And we're working at the moment to get that level 1 content accredited, so that we'll be able to offer online QQI level 1 accreditation for learners working at that level going forward. And yeah, I'm happy to share my email at the end. So if anybody is interested in like getting into like e-learning and creating a new platform, we've been through that journey ourselves when we were moving from Right On to Learn with NALA. So I'm happy to be contacted about that.
Great. And what I guess I'll just ask now, do you have any kind of parting words of wisdom around digital inclusion for the audience members today?
Yeah, I think the key thing is to know that you're not on your own with this. So there are plenty of people who are out there who are in the same journey, and having an event like this that brings people together is a great way to share information, to create those opportunities to network. And there's so many resources out there as well that, you know, we're going to hear from Liz in terms of the whole pathway for getting digitalized. So yeah, just know that you're not alone in it, and hopefully that will help to reduce the fear factor a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you, Katrina. And then Gemma Leo, any words of wisdom, parting words?
Gemma Leo or Gemma Lee?
Gemma Leo.
Oh, me. Oh, okay. Parting words of wisdom. I think I've noticed one of the things in the comments was, you know, if we lived in a perfect world, we'd all have the time and the money to do everything. I get it. I totally get it. It's funding is a challenge. Time is a challenge. For me, it's really about taking the time to look at what is urgent versus important. And it's hard when you're constantly faced with things in your face, but if you can carve out at a senior management team level or with your team, whoever it might be, carve out that time to figure out what is important and driving that forward, that is what is going to kind of transform your business.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Gemma.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear what all the other organizations are doing, Gemma. I think we need to have a chat at some point. I'd love to start seeing some of this in our own organization as well. But I think from my perspective, yeah, like as others are saying, there is support there. There's huge funding in Erasmus Plus that's available if that's relevant to your project, your ideas for development in your organization. Obviously, we always have that European angle, but I think partnering with other organizations across Europe can be a fantastic way to really boost yourself and kind of get a few steps ahead much quicker than you would have done just tipping away locally. And even just the kind of inspiration that comes that maybe was never part of the intention of the project, and suddenly you see something, you go, oh my gosh, this is great, ooh, let's try this, and those ideas that are generated. So even if European projects maybe were not on your radar or something that you were thinking of, I think it's certainly something to consider as a way to really jump ahead in some of these areas for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you all so much for that. So I think that was a really great way to sort of kind of showcase that this is achievable. Digital transformation for organizations is achievable, and that there are loads of supports out there And the people providing the supports are very approachable, and you should take advantage of that. So we now have some time for some Q&A. So I'm just gonna look in the chat and see if there were any specific questions.
Yeah, so I had a look actually.
Yeah.
And there was the one that was just mentioned. So there was kind of a comment, but also question it, in an ideal world, it would be great if funding was available for community centers, as we are firefighting all the time. And that goes good together with, I thought Erasmus Plus was only for large grant amounts. So I think there is funding out there, and we heard that also right now from Gemma Lee. But maybe people are not aware of it. And I saw it already, Gemma, you answered in the chat, but maybe you could elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. Of course, we do have these big projects that go right up to €400,000, but we also have, I know we had some applications in the October deadline that were for like 5,000-6,000, and it was sending maybe 2 or 3 people away on a training course in a European country to come back and bring that learning back to their organization. So it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. There's lots of kind of easy ways to join in through smaller projects, through really straightforward projects. Even without actually applying for funding, you know, we also offer opportunities for international training. So I can give you all advance notice. There's one being advertised on the 1st of November for a trip to Finland, all about the power of non-formal education, fully funded by us. So we do offer these other kind of trainings that don't even require you to do the whole application form and everything. Also, as I mentioned, we have that online platform, Upale, as a way to kind of start engaging in Europe, but do it from your own laptop and sort of start seeing what's happening across Europe. So yeah, taking those first steps doesn't have to be a huge, big, convoluted project. It can just be something as simple as a small funding application, or just coming along to some of our events.
Great. I should have mentioned that at the event next week, we're going to take a closer look at sort of funding, the funding that is out there to help organizations to digitalize. So we saw there was another question from Mary. I think this might be a question for Katrina. Is there any way to check the accessibility of our website? Is that a service that NALA offers?
It's not. I put in to the chat there a link to the W3.org. So that's the World Wide Web Consortium, who are the body that are behind the standards that's being used for the web accessibility directives coming out of the EU. And there's a number of links in there that are recommended. I can also recommend Viali. I think they were formerly called IA Labs, and they will do a service where they will check your website. So we would have used them, for example, in NALA, because it wasn't just checking, I suppose, the front pages, but also some of the content within our e-learning platform as well. So it required a bit more of an extensive check, because there had to be a login and so on. So we had to set them up with them like test accounts. But I'm happy to pass on details of them. Found them really good to work with.
Yeah, perfect. We're happy we can include that in the follow-up as well. I don't think there are any other questions in the chat. Is there anybody that wanted to come on mic and ask a question of the panelists? And if not, that's okay. What we might do then is move on to Liz's presentation. And then there might be some more questions that come up. There probably will be after that presentation. And then we can just, we'll allocate the Q&A time to the end of Liz's presentation. Is that okay, Liz?
Okay, I'm just hoping everybody can see the screen. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep. Perfect.
Excellent. It's always embarrassing if you're sort of seen as an IT person and you can't even share your screen in a Zoom meeting. So that's good. So it's great to meet everybody today virtually. Just to introduce myself for a minute, I'm Elizabeth Kelly. I started off as a medieval historian. And I moved into becoming a technical writer. Then I moved into nonprofit work using digital skills. And here I am today as the Deputy CEO of Include. So I've had a bit of a digital journey myself, and maybe I'm an example of it doesn't have to be an obvious road. So we're going to cover today the digital landscape and a roadmap to digitalising your organisation. And I'm doing it from the perspective of where I'm coming from. So I'm working with Include. And we were formed in 2006 as a charity, and our founder really wanted to allow nonprofits and charities to have the same access to digital as the commercials do. And we only work with charities and nonprofits, and we like to think we bring a combination of technical, nonprofit and digital solutions. Many of us have worked in both in the past. So I would have worked for UNICEF and I would have worked for GE, General Electric, just to give you the two extremes. And we try and bring into the nonprofit space both experiences. We provide IT donations through our TechSoup program, and we also provide digital solutions, mostly based on Salesforce, but also on Accounts IQ to nonprofits and charities as well. So that's just a very brief overview of who Include are and where I'm coming from today. We have over 400 clients in the CRM space at the minute, and they're all over the place, just to say it. From domestic violence to counselling services, to grant management services, to the LGBTQI community, to the Wheel itself as a client. Pretty much into every sector, but we have a particular passion for working in the addiction sector, for working in the youth sector, for working in the domestic violence sector, for working in the traveller sector, and we've developed specific applications for those particular sectors. So that's just to give a small, very small overview of what we do. But less about Include and less about me. And just a reminder, it's going to be what's happening today in the digital landscape. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time giving you some outlines for a roadmap to digitalisation. So the digital landscape today, well, maybe we need to start off by saying it's changing all the time. And when you think about it, all of the things we couldn't do 20 years ago now are so easy now. And we can thank Ryanair for making us all pay for our own flights online and do our own work online to get our flights. We can look at eBay. We can look at us all doing our online banking. We're looking at the deliveries from Amazon. And the whole reason it's been so transformative is because the large companies have realized there's huge profits to be made in doing that. They're saving on time, they're saving on effort, they're putting the resources into the digital part because they know they're going to reap what Gemma was talking about in time and motion and profits. So I was nearly clapping under the table, Gemma, but this is why the commercials do it. They're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because it helps them as organizations. And that's all very well. And in some ways, everything on this screen is a bit old hat, you know? We're logging in, we're going to the website, we're booking the flight. Even social media is kind of almost old hat at this point, despite what Elon Musk and the other people will say, we're used to it. We're comfortable in that space, sort of. At least our children and our grandchildren are. But it keeps changing. And we've had AI already mentioned today. One of the figures that really struck me was how fast AI is taking hold. So if you look at the amount of time it takes to reach 1 million users. So this is a typical tech startup. It took Netflix a huge amount of time in months to reach 1 million users. It's way over that now, but just the length of time it got to get there. Twitter didn't take quite as long as that, but there still took in months a good long time, nearly 2 years. Facebook got there in 10 months. Instagram got there by 3 months. ChatGPT got to over 1 million users in pretty much less than a month. Now that's scary. That is the speed with which the digitalization process is moving. And we have to kind of keep on board. Now, you might turn around and say, lovely, Elizabeth, that's great for all the commercial organisations, but it doesn't really affect the charity sector yet. It doesn't really affect what we're doing. So I came across this article in The Guardian. The link will be there in the slides, which are going to be hopefully going to you. And it shows how currently social workers in England are using AI for their work. And I found this kind of interesting in a few ways. So what they're using is a particular piece of software, okay? And it's been set up so that it can record conversations, it can draft letters, and it can propose actions that human workers might not have considered. And there are 7 councils in England currently using this. It's called Magic Notes AI tool. It writes almost instant summaries, those follow-up actions, and it's cutting the time. Now, this will be of interest to Gemma Leo. It's cutting the time, apparently, that social workers are using by a huge amount, and they think it has the potential to save about £1 billion a year, 2 billion per year if it's implemented in the sector. Now, I look at that and I think great. And I think, look at how much time people could save on. I hate typing up notes after meetings, that kind of thing. But there's also questions there about, do you want an AI system to have the final decision? Will the workers still be given the time to consider other options? What happens if a social worker ignores a proposed action and everything goes wrong? So there's a whole piece in that area we all need to think about. It's there already. We can't really ignore it. So maybe we should start looking at the digital landscape as having many levels. So you could look at productivity, and I would say most of us in the room have used some of these tools, whether they're Word or Excel, Office 365, Adobe. So these are simple tools that just help us do things. We're no longer typing at the typewriter. And then we're looking at collaboration tools. And one of the big things that came up in my Padlet group was collaboration. And we're all using Zoom today. But there's also ways of collaborating. So you can have shared file solutions like Box or Dropbox or multiple ones. There's service delivery solutions, and we've heard Salesforce CRM being mentioned. There's mobile apps that can be very useful when they're added into a CRM or if they're used on their own. There's governance, and again, financial packages to help with that, board software. And finally, and this is where I get very excited, is what I call sectoral solutions. So this is where a sector comes together and they say, we have needs as a sector. We want to be able to record our data, which we all know is one of the most valuable things we record. We want to record it consistently. We want to be able to report on it consistently. And we want to have the highest standards of practice and process embedded in our systems. So today, just by coincidence today, we're having what we call an eSafe community of practice. So eSafe was a solution that was designed in collaboration with Safe Ireland, which is the umbrella organisation for the domestic violence sector in Ireland. And we have, with them, designed a system that allows all of the work with the clients to be recorded, but also allows that work to be analysed and reported on. They're coming together today in a community of practice to make suggestions about how that can be improved. And they have committed as a community to invest their time and their money into doing something together that allows this best practice to get better and better and better, and the processes to be common among them all. And this is where I genuinely believe that digitization can support the sector. I think it's wonderful when it works. Okay. But maybe you're not interested in how it's going to help a sector at the minute. You're interested in how's it going to help me. So I just want to give a very quick case study on how digitization helped one particular organization. Now, this full case study is up on our website, the Include website. So you can read the full case study there. I'm just going to try and give you a few highlights from it. So we've been working with Dublin Simon, which is a homeless service, for several years at this stage. And we had put in a CRM, and that was great. So Dublin Simon's mission is to help people to exit homelessness, access and retain homes, and rebuild lives by delivering housing, health and well-being. And they recognised right from the start that they needed a system that reached each part of their organisation. So we were working away with them, and then they realised that they had a specific problem. And the specific problem was for the outreach team. So the Dublin Simon outreach team go around the city and they help the people who are sleeping rough. But they have, and we all know this one, an SLA with the Dublin Regional Homeless Executive, which means if they're sent alerts from the Dublin Regional Homeless Executive by email, they have to respond within a certain length of time, and they have to log the number of times they've tried to reach that person after the alert. And this was very complex for a team that was receiving the alerts by email, that was trying to figure out which of the team members was going to respond to each alert, was trying to ensure that the reports were filled in for the DRAT, and there was a massive amount of time spent on administration, which could have been used helping those who were sleeping rough, and the poor old outreach manager was being driven mad trying to manage all of this work. So we did something very simple, I think, to help them. Well, I'm going to make it sound very simple. It took a bit of work. So what we did was we developed an app in partnership with the outreach team. Now, this is very important. We went and we designed it with them. We worked with the manager and a couple of workers to ensure it was going to work the way they wanted. So what happened was that all of the alerts that were coming in by email from the DRHE went directly into their CRM, but they went out into the app and they could be viewed on their mobile phones as they were out and about in the city. We put in a lovely color-coded traffic light system so people could see the status of each client. The manager could assign a staff member who is out and about to a particular case. So he could see that this person was meant to do this, and the staff member could see, great, I'm off there now. And the outreach manager could check the status of all of the alerts, and they could respond to the alerts to the DRHE, and also as part of their whole work to the Dublin Simon Community Management Team. Because you don't just want to report to the DRHE. You don't want just to feed that system. You want to be able to see how your work in general is helping throughout all programs. Not saying that particularly well, but if you say, well, I'm going to measure the work of one program in a silo, all you're doing is looking at one particular program. But if you say, I want to look at my data in a whole as an organization for all the programs, you're going to have much more knowledge about how you want to expand your programs, which programs are succeeding, which ones you need to invest more in, and how your organization itself can absolutely grow and improve its services. So the results were brilliant. They reached the rough sleepers faster. We could have done a lovely time and motion study on that one, Gemma. I wish we had. But they knew that they were. They did a follow-up evaluation on it. They discovered it was much easier to teach new staff how to use this app than it had been to teach the staff to do the admin before. It was easier for staff to see the status of particular clients, particular alerts. There was improved communication between the team members. There was less time spent on admin and more time spent on engaging with people who needed their help. And the reports were done much more easily. It was a real win. But maybe what we need to remember is what actually led to that success. And the first thing that led to the success, it was co-designed. It wasn't something that came in from above, was landed on the outreach team, and they were told, go off, do that. Okay? It was deliberately designed to be adaptable. So if the reporting needs change for the DRHE, we can change the app easily. It was accessible, so it could be used anywhere around the city on a mobile phone. It was affordable, and it was appropriate for use. And if you're doing any sort of digital strategy, think of those 4 A's. Is it going to be adaptable, accessible, affordable, and appropriate? And most important of all, I think, it wasn't standalone. It wasn't just one thing Dublin Simon did to try and improve its work. It was part of an overall digital strategy, which they rolled out over 3 years, which encompassed everything from fundraising to service user help to incidents and accidents to multiple areas of the work that they were doing. And that is very important when you think about how you're going to do your work. So if you're thinking of a big digital strategy, I'm going to say something that probably most people will realize already. Think about cloud architecture. I nearly don't have to say this any longer, but the first few years I was with Include, and I've been with Include nearly 10 years now, a lot of people were very nervous of the cloud. They were very nervous of things going up there where I can't see them. But for the charity sector, it really is the way to go. And to be honest, I think COVID has proved it much more. So if you're going digital, remember cloud architecture. Remember storing things where you don't have to have servers, because it saves huge amounts in costs because you don't have servers to pay for. Generally, backups come as part of it. Generally, there's no versioning issues. And there isn't the same upfront capital costs you have if you put a digital infrastructure with servers and stuff in yourself. It can be accessed anywhere, 24/7. You can control access much more easily. You can control access to particular pieces of data much more easily. And you can generally integrate with other electronic services more easily. So I genuinely would say, if you're going to go digital, please, please, please go cloud. Okay. And then just the general benefits of digitalization. It should, when it's done well, support both process and data management. And you need to have both in your mind. You should aim, if you're dealing directly with service users, but with any kind of stakeholder, to be able to see a 360-degree view of what you're doing with them. You should be able to have what I call a single source of truth. So by that, I mean you don't have 20 Excel spreadsheets spread around the place. You haven't a clue who's got the latest one and who owns the latest one and when it was last updated. It should reduce admin time. You should have data available for reporting, because we all know the length of time people spend on reporting. We did one particular project, and I was told that before we did the project, that the CEO spent 1 month out of every 3 trying to get her quarterly reports done. She reduced that to a couple of hours once the project was done. You should have the evidence of work that you have done. So if you're going back up to your funders, you're able to say, well, we did help 500 service users this year, and the progression on our outcome star went from there to there on average for the service users. And your data should be more securely reported. The biggest data breach this year in this sector was the one where there were piles of documents found in an old hospital, an abandoned building. It wasn't a data breach in this sector because somebody had breached the cloud. Your data is generally going to be more secure if it's stored digitally, if you do it properly. Note the phrase, if you do it properly. Okay, let's do a quick roadmap to digitalising your organisation. So start it with a single step. You don't have to do everything at once, and I genuinely would encourage you not to do everything at once. The best projects we have worked on are ones that were done like an elephant, bite it, take it, eat it one bite at a time. Decide where you need to really work on. And it could be productivity still. Maybe something in that area is something you really need to get some help with. Maybe you need to use Office 365 and just store all the files securely in SharePoint. Maybe that's your first step. Okay. Maybe it's collaboration. Maybe you're going to go down the route of service delivery solutions. Maybe you're trying to look at how can we improve our governance? How can we make governance easier? Second, please plan. There is no point waking up first thing in the morning and saying, we're going to make it digital and we'll have it done by lunchtime. You won't. I can promise you that. And often I say to people, do a short-term plan, but also do a long-term plan. Think of what you'd like to achieve this year, but maybe what would you like to achieve in 5 years' time? Because sometimes we've gone into organizations who've put in an awful lot of good short-term digital steps, but there hasn't been a plan for integrating them together. And there's more than one silo of data that suddenly is sitting out on its own. My favorite story is going into one nonprofit, which is not based in the Republic of Ireland, I hasten to add, and discovered that they had taken on over 50 digital tools. They were paying bills of over 70 grand a year for those digital tools, and they hadn't quite figured out why they had 6 different versions of creating online content. So please plan. Don't do anything without a decent plan. This is blooming stating the obvious, but not everybody does. Start thinking about where you are now. Start thinking about the distractions, the dangers, and the potholes, and then where you would like to be. Now, what I mean by the distractions, the dangers, and the potholes is that there are times to do a big digitalization project, and there are times not to do a big digitalization project. So we went into one particular organization who really, really, really wanted a big digitalization project done. They wanted a giant CRM. And we thought, great, we'll give them a really good CRM. It'll be fantastic. But what they hadn't highlighted to us before we started was that they were also going through the process of changing all their own processes and streamlining them. And we had started designing the CRM based on the old processes, because that was what we were told at the start. And suddenly, right in the middle, we were told, no, those processes are going out the window. We're going to have a pile of new processes. Now, absolutely, we put the new processes in, but it was a lot more expensive because they hadn't realized that if you're doing something like a big process change, you have to think about how that might affect a digitalization project. I mean, the other distractions are absolutely the day-to-day work. We have to keep doing our day-to-day work. For most people, it's a luxury if you can get somebody in to manage the project. If you're a medium or large organization, I'd say it's almost essential to do it. But for people who maybe have less than 10 or 15 employees, that may not be a possibility. So it's, as Gemma said, it's about being able to ring fence some time from a staff member and not expecting them to do the impossible and do their day-to-day work and manage a big digitization project as well. The third thing I'm going to say is please bring people on board. I learned this when I went out and worked with UNICEF in West Africa. And I was a bit younger in those days. And I had all sorts of wonderful ideas about how I was going to improve everybody's life with training and IT and all sorts of great things. But I learned very quickly that if people are going to be part of a process, if people are going to accept any new systems that you want them to do and use, then they need to be there at the start. They need to be there. They need to know this is going to happen. They need to be able to give input to it. They need to be able to say, well, I'm a bit nervous about that because. They need to be able to be trained. They need to be able to be part of it. And again, the most successful projects we have had are when the senior management team recognize this. It's really, really, really important because you do not want to lose a staff member who may be the heartbeat of your organization because they don't want to tell somebody that they can't use a laptop, for example. So being able to do that from the start is so important. And then I say it's very good to look at the people, the data, the devices, and the applications. So if we started looking at the people, and again, it's all about the people. Note that I'm not really talking a lot about software yet at all. I'm talking about the softer pieces, but they're essential. So start looking at all the people who are going to be helped by and use your system. So look at the staff and look at how their work can be helped. Look at developing guidelines and policies around digitalization as well. So, for example, you might want to have an induction policy which shows up front how you're going to train people in how they're going to use the systems. You might want to have a policy on how people are going to be allowed to use different systems or how they're going to be allowed to use hardware. You need to look at your clients. Are your clients going to be comfortable with you recording your interactions? Are your clients going to be comfortable helping you record some of the interactions? Can you go automation? Can you go self-service? What are the gaps that are going to stop that? So we've just been doing a particular piece of work with another organization. I won't mention names, but this organization sends nurses out to help clients in their home. And they do assessments and they have a look and see how else can the client be helped. And they need to then alert other team members as to how that's going to happen. So the organization has invested in some tablets for each of the nurses. The nurse sits down and they work with the client to fill in the form on the tablet. So there is total clarity about what's being said. The recommendations are seen by the client. The tasks are set by the nurse and go automatically into the CRM, and then the follow-ups are done. And each of these are very measurable, okay? But the reason for the tablet is so that the nurse isn't hidden behind a laptop screen. She's sitting beside the client and filling it in with the client, okay? And then donors and funders. How can you help your donors give? And there's a multiple ways you can do that digitally, through the website, to automatic payments, going from the website through Stripe into a CRM. Loads and loads and loads of ways. You can take some of the lovely giving platforms and have that information flow into the CRM as well. So there's lots of ways you can help your donors give, and there's lots of ways you can go back to your donors and say, well, this is how you helped this is how your donations helped as well, in ways that are not administration heavy. And then how do you report back to your funders? You get a grant. How can you report using your digital strategy in a way that is easy for you to do? So again, data. Data is key to a lot of this. So I'm going to sort of run very quickly through this, I promise. How can you check it's going to be accurate? And there's ways you can do that within systems. How can you check that it's available? So can it be accessed anywhere that it needs to be accessed? How can you check it's going to be secure? And that can be against natural disaster. It can be against theft. It can be against viruses. But perhaps the biggest thing is, how can you set it up so that it's secure against hacking? It's secure against user misuse. Many things. So there's a lot of things to consider here. This is not a GDPR meeting, but it should be key for when you're doing your digital planning. And just remember, data protection is a legal obligation. And then very, very briefly, have a look and do an audit of what you have already in the way of hardware, because it's amazing. Some organizations don't have an asset register that includes all the hardware they have. And I'm just going to say a couple of things. I would thoroughly recommend that if people are asking employees to use their mobile phones for work or their laptops for work, they should be owned by the business. Because if they're owned by the business, you can put in much more security and much more accessibility, many more accessibility features, and you can turn people off and reduce their access to different things if you need to. So I would seriously, seriously recommend that you invest in laptops and mobile phones for staff members if you're asking them to use them for work. In the sector, I know we're all short of money. I know we're all trying to make do and mend, but there's a certain level of device security that is much better if the devices are owned by you as businesses rather than if they're owned by individuals. And then just do some absolute basic recording of what's on each device, the operating system, the security password protection that's there, the antivirus software that's there, and establish some user protocols. What are you allowing people to use your devices for? Okay, because that can be problematic. I won't tell too many stories out of court, but when I was working in the commercial world, we had people using their devices for things you really wouldn't want people using their devices for. I had one guy who had their laptop set up as a porn hub. And again, I told the story earlier about the non-profit, not based in the Republic of Ireland, that had all these applications. They hadn't a clue why they had them and how much they were costing. You do need to do a regular audit of what you have before you go and do the next thing. It's amazing that people sort of go to the CEO and say, I found this bit of software, it could be very handy. It's only $10 a month. Can I have it? And the CEO says, yeah, for an easy life. And they don't look at it in the context of everything else the company already has, which might be able to do the same job for less money. I'm rushing a little bit through the end. So again, I'm just pushing, use the cloud and use software as a service, because it is going to be more secure. You are going to be paying licensing fees, so there are free licenses out there for certain things, but in the end, it's going to be probably more flexible, and it's probably going to be more accessible and adaptable for your organization. One of the things we do recommend is when you're doing some of this, you write some user stories. To do that, it's really saying why I want something or how I'm going to do something. And we get team members in different teams to sit down and say, as a, for example, fundraiser, I want to report to the board so that they can see that I have raised 60 grand in a particular campaign this year. Okay. Once you establish some of these user stories, and they can be done at many different levels, you could actually start to see what kind of things you need within whatever digital systems you decide to get. If you do this in a role-based way and you can see the I wants and the benefits that are going to come from them, you tend to be more laser focused on what you want your systems to do. I do really thoroughly suggest that you partner with others, because if you work as a sector, you tend to save money, you tend to incorporate best practice, and you tend to be able to learn from other people's mistakes and then in your turn be able to mentor others. So I genuinely believe in reaching out to other people, and we've had great offers from Nala and Lurgus, and I'm sure Gemma in Crown as well would help, and you're very, very welcome to reach out to me and include. But look at other people in your sector, see who's succeeding digitally, and see if you can work with them. Going to give a very last few bits. So these are the digitalization success factors as far as I'm concerned if you're doing any kind of digital work. The first thing is make certain you get sponsorship from the top. If you're trying to do it without somebody at, we used to say C-level, but your CEO or your CFO or whoever is in the senior management team being on board with it and leading it with a charge, you absolutely need to have them. It's going to fail otherwise. The second thing is make certain you have a good internal lead, somebody who may become a system administrator if you're putting in a CRM. Third, please allocate enough time for training and getting used to the system, okay? And time to support users as they get used to the system. Plan to allow for changes, okay? I know this sounds silly, but generally when you're putting in a new system of any sort, you're going to discover that 6 months down the line, you have extra things you want to do, okay? So plan for that. And then whoever you decide to do it with, make certain that they're going to continue to support you. That it isn't sort of, we'll put in a system and it'll be goodbye. That there is going to be a continuous system of engagement and support with them. And then just remember it's a journey. You're not trying to do everything at once. Digitization is a very large word, but it can be broken down into just the letters, and just break down the task into small steps and you will succeed. So I'm going to stop at this stage. I've realized I'm probably being very bold and running out of time. So I've stopped sharing, but I'm happy to take any questions from anybody.
Thank you, Liz. That was excellent. I think this was super valuable. So it's more than okay that you went over a little bit. Give you that. But no, I think that's really practical steps and actions for organizations to take that are completely new to this, or just kind of looking to scale up and kind of know where else to take it. So thank you so much for that. So we do have some time for questions. I think there was one in the chat. Let me see. Where did it go? Something about cost. Okay, so Patty Fitzpatrick asks, working and using the cloud, what is the smallest number of personnel required, or can it be used for an individual to bring all their details together?
It could be used for an individual if they really wanted to. I'm not sure it'd be the best use of time and resources. The smallest organization we worked with had 2 members of staff, and one of those was really a volunteer, and they did find it useful. But it's really what you want to use it for. If it's simply, as a contact list, something like that, you might be as simple as to say, great, we'll have a contact list and we'll share it as a Google Doc. That might just be enough. There's no need for develop a whole CRM for that. If you're saying, well, we're hoping to grow the organization, we really want to plan digitally and to know that we're making the right steps, then you may be wise to say, well, let's start with the CRM. We'll get the basics into the CRM and we'll grow that CRM as we get bigger.
Right. And then his follow-on question is
Can I just echo Liz on that?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we all hope to do and hope that we do, but future proofing is such a thing. The worst, I talked about rework, the worst thing is you just kind of focused on the now, solve an issue, and then a year down the line you have to change it because you didn't think about kind of future proofing. That's just always such a thing to keep in your mind.
Yeah, exactly. And this small organization that did put in the CRM, I think really, did take advantage of it. And one of our desires in Include is that even small organizations should be able to do these things. And we've various packages and products to help people just get started. As I say, this is not an advertising feature for what we do, but there are things out there that help you get started in a simple way.
Great. And then, sorry, there's a follow-on question. What's a basic cost annually, I guess, for using the cloud or CRM?
So, how long is a piece of string is another good question. So what we tend to say, well, what we provide is Salesforce CRMs in general. So Salesforce is very generous. They do give 10 free licenses to all registered charities. Okay, so that's a really good starting point. Sorry?
You're talking about Salesforce.
Yep, I am. And now you have to apply for them, but we've had huge success. I don't think we've had, in all my time in Include, I think I've had 1 rejection and there was good reasons for that. So it's well worth applying for the licenses. That reduces the ongoing costs. Now, Include provides support. We do make a charge for that. And currently we suggest that's around 600 a year. So there is a support piece that you have to think about. But there's also the development piece. So how do you get Salesforce to do what you want it to do? Now, you can do it yourselves. Go ahead. Some people are very lucky, and Gemma did mention you can get volunteers to help out with some of this kind of stuff, and that could be a way to start. What we find is organizations, if they're going to invest the time and effort for their staff to learn a system, it might be wise to invest in someone like Include to help set up the system, and that can vary in cost. anything, I think we've got a nice basic package now for 3,000 as a once-off cost, and it goes right up then. So Dublin Simon costs quite a lot more than 3,000. So you can spend as much as you want. I mean, big commercial companies will literally spend millions. I've never charged anybody anything like that, but it really is as long as a piece of string. But if we said a 3,000 starting point might be a way to think about it if you're willing to invest that. Or as Gemma said, what volunteer help can you get? Is there somebody out there who's a real expert in Salesforce who's dying to do some volunteering for you?
Great. Thank you, Liz. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I'm conscious that we're coming up to 12 o'clock. So I think, in the interest of time, we will have included everybody's email in the follow-up email. So if you want to reach out to any of our speakers today, I'm sure they'd be happy to take any questions. So all that's left for me really to say is that we hope that you will join us for our follow-on event next Wednesday, where we present sort of the input findings from the consultations today. And we will send the follow-up email with the recording and the slides and all the resources that I've mentioned. We'll send that out later this week. A big thank you to all of our fantastic speakers today. Thank you to all of yourselves for attending and for engaging and giving your input. And thank you to my colleague, Christina, for helping to organize this event. So hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.